Hey everyone, welcome back with Bino Mac, and today is a somber episode, but I wanted to pay tribute to one of the biggest stars in the business. Before we get into this though, I want to preface this by saying any kind of slander is going to result in being blocked from the channel. You can make jokes about Hulk Hogan quotes or his career, you can say he's overrated or you weren't a fan as long as it stays within the confines of wrestling. That said, if you're one of those people who are celebrating his death or trying to drag others down, you will be banned from the channel. We all know what Terry Bollea has said, we all know the more shady aspects of him, we all know too much about the man behind the character. This is a celebration of the wrestler Hulk Hogan. He's said some shitty things, but he hasn't murdered or assaulted anyone, and if you think you're doing a good thing by celebrating the death of someone, or saying it's a good thing like someone like him is no longer with us, I'm just calling it how it is. I think you're a scumbag. You're no better than the people that you hate. You're actively spreading more hate, and you've got to be sick in the head to think that some nasty words, even if I gotta admit they are the nastiest words in the English language, if you think that they justify your actions in that regard. Make your own Hogan videos where you hate on him or something. You have that absolute right. But you don't have to share if you don't like the guy. But if you leave a nasty comment, you're actively just going to start you're actively looking to start problems with people online for the sake of it, and that will not be tolerated. That said though, let's, now that the nasty stuff is out of the way, it's time to pay tribute to, like I said, one of the biggest stars in the entire industry. And if you don't understand that, I don't know what to tell you. He's definitely top 3 of all time. I think the argument could be made that he is the biggest star in wrestling of all time. But, I'd say maybe people like Stone Cold and The Rock, you can make arguments for them. Other than that, it's just a little tough to kind of make that argument. So, obviously, before I was born, Hogan, obviously, in the 80s, with the wrestling boom, it was, I think, 1987 when he went toe-to-toe with Andre the Giant, WrestleMania 3. And that is just it's not one of the most technically sound, it's not one of the most entertaining matches of all time. That said, it is the biggest match of all time, potentially. And Hogan's had a lot of those under his belt. And I think another big match that really shows just how good of a wrestler Hulk Hogan really was The Rock, WrestleMania 18, of course. Just the psychology. I mean, that's what wrestling, in my opinion, that's what I love most about wrestling. It's not about the fancy flips or, the range of the moveset and stuff like that. If you're into that, you're into that. No big deal. For me personally, it's the psychology with that kind of stuff. Well, that was actually a pretty quick match. I didn't expect him. That's the power of the leg drop, brother. But, yeah, I mean, just the psychology of that match, the energy there. I mean, they didn't have to do too much. And yet it's still just one of the most amazing matches of all time. That crowd was just so hyped up. And they knew exactly what to do and how to play into the hype that the fans had created for them, That's how you know you're one of the best in the industry. But I'll put it this way, no disrespect to them or anything like that, but, people all over the world know who Hulk Hogan is. Really, only wrestling fans know who Dean Malenko is. Or, Arn Andersons and stuff like that. So, I don't know. I've always been a character-based guy, though, and honestly, Hulk Hogan's one of the most he's a larger-than-life kind of guy, you know what I'm saying? And obviously, he had the big run in the 80s, kind of bringing wrestling up, one of the major focal points on it's why wrestling is as big as it was at the time and helped make it big and, the staying power of today. Obviously, after that, he had a pretty big lull. Not everything he did was great, of course. And eventually, though, he came back into WCW, and after a few years, he was able to help legitimize the nWo by being the third man there. And, of course, revitalize his whole career, with the whole nWo and stuff like that. And even as a heel, man, I mean, you can say what you want, but I mean, Hogan was prime heel material, man. I think people forget just how good of a heel he was, how much it was easy to hate him, the way he talked, the way he moved, the cowardly actions of him. He was something special. And then even his run in 2002, coming back in the WWE, getting one last run, the return of Hulkamania and whatnot to the WWE. Even, his, I think he did a lot of people say he didn't put people over, and I think the major argument to that would have to be Brock Lesnar. Now, did he make him in the same way that kind of like The Rock gave him his first big legitimate win in that sense? No. But, Hulk Hogan, being destroyed by Brock Lesnar, that kind of really, I think, was one of the biggest, the first big Brock Lesnar moments that he had in his career. Because he didn't just, lose to Brock. He got, pretty much squashed, really. And of course, I mean, Hogan, like I said, I mean, I don't even mind jokes. Obviously, I'm going to, I'm still going to say, that doesn't work for me, brother, when the context is right. Ooh, got another pinfall. It's going by pretty quick. But obviously, I'm going to still use, his jokes, and I'm still going to make fun of the fact that he said the weird, nonsensical stuff. Like being, how he was almost the bass guitarist, or the bass player in, Metallica at one point, or how he one time, I think he said it was 400 years, he almost wrestled 400 days in a year. It's because he kept flying back and forth to Japan, and somehow the time zone allowed him to have extra days. Just it's stupid stuff, man. But, and honestly, it's crazy to think Hulk Hogan, too, if the Jesse Ventura story is to be believed, there could have been a union in wrestling all the way back in, I think it was the late 80s or something like that, and that would have been pretty crazy. I'll say this, though, if the WWE, if wrestlers had a union, and the WWE did, had to pay for all the health care and all the stuff that they wanted and the benefits, there would not be a WWE today. Maybe there would have been some sort of revive for him, but there's no way with how close, having to take water coolers out of the freaking offices at Titan Tower, and, just how terrible business was in the mid-90s. There was no way they were going to be able to to stay in business if they had to contend with unions as well. But that said, maybe they will just severely downsize their roster or something like that. I don't know. But it's interesting to think, what could have been if that were the case. And Hogan hadn't, tattled on Jesse Ventura like that. But, I mean, even just thinking about all the big matches he had, man. I mean, like I said, they were not technical masterpieces, however. I mean, we have, Hogan versus Sheik winning his first title. Of course, they had Hogan and Mr. T teaming up to take on Piper, and I believe it was Orndorff. I mean, Paul Orndorff. Or maybe I'm still mispronouncing it. We'll go with Mr. Wonderful on that one. And then obviously, next year, I think WrestleMania 2, he was even was he in the corner of Mr. T for that boxing match? Roddy Piper really didn't like Mr. T because he hated celebrities in wrestling and stuff like that. Which, admittedly a lot of fans do. But obviously he had the big match with King Kong Bundy that year. Blue Cage, WrestleMania 2. And then WrestleMania 3, I already said, Andre the Giant, biggest match of all time, potentially. And then, of course, you got the freaking Mega Powers Explode, man. And that, a lot of people say that, the storytelling in the 80s was lame and it just doesn't hold up as well. That is a fantastic storyline. I don't care what anybody says. and it was done very well, in which you can kind of see both sides of the fence and stuff like that. You kind of feel bad for Macho Man, as he kind of feels like a third wheel in some regards, but obviously Hogan, in character, he's just trying to do his best to, he's just doing the right good guy thing. But that said, Hogan, he's got to get his hot dog in, standing in. Can't just go down and save the Macho Man, and Macho Man only saved it when he was saved Hogan when it was absolutely necessary. And even going beyond that, I mean, he got WrestleMania 6 with the Ultimate Warrior, which, it didn't do... I think a lot of people say that Hogan kind of sabotaged Warrior in that regard, but I think Warrior sabotaged himself more than, Hogan did anything like that. I think that was a legit kind of an attempt at a passing of the torch moment. Just didn't work out. Wasn't all Ultimate Warrior's fault, but I think it does seem like he had like a really bad attitude, and he's probably one of the least liked people in the history of wrestling, I'd say, at this point. Then let's see, of course, there was the infamous Yokozuna match, and yeah, that was just stupid. Because, I mean, if they really wanted to have a good ending at that point, they should have just let Brett win. But at the same time, I think it would have been cool if Yokozuna, we had a heel champion a little bit earlier that carried, maybe gave him a little bit more legitimacy. Even though he did get his win back. But, honestly, it was that pesky cameraman that got Hogan in the eyes with the flash. And then it took the WWE a really long time to kind of find that top star that was on the level of Hogan. And I think that kind of really came with Stone Cold Steve Austin, because Brett was pretty good, and I feel like he was someone who wasn't given as much chance to shine as he should have. And he did take himself pretty seriously, but, he did seem like he was a pretty good role model, all things considered, especially for kids. And he had a very interesting look, very interesting technical style. And I think he's a little bit better on promos than people give him credit for, especially during the 1997 Hart Foundation days. But obviously it didn't work out as well. And, Shawn Michaels was like, the golden boy for Vince McMahon. And obviously he had huge backstage issues and all sorts of stuff. And, fans didn't like him as much as a face at that time. They preferred him as a heel and stuff like that. And I think Shawn Michaels just was a natural, especially in the 90s. You could just kind of see it, radiating him off of him all the time. He was just a naturally hateable guy. He just looked like a douchebag. So, there's not really much reason for, the fellas in the audience, I'll say, to cheer on Shawn. And then, eventually he did turn heel, and then we got some Stone Cold action coming in, and he was the next big star during the Attitude Era. And then Rock came along pretty soon after, and it was kind of like the clashing of the two. Some people say The Rock eclipsed Stone Cold in 2000, and I think to a degree there's definitely truth to that. After Austin got injured, but then eventually we lost both of those guys around the same time, unfortunately, and Brock Lesnar was supposed to be the next big thing. Didn't stay around for that long, and it just felt like for a while the WWE didn't really have a hero in that sense, a top guy once Brock left. And then eventually, we got some pretty cool moments, with Eddie Guerrero, and then we got Batista and John Cena, came up, and a lot of people, I don't know, and this is definitely a WWE thing that I think they've kind of somehow managed to convince fans of it, and Hogan experienced this first. People got sick of Hogan, after a while, especially when he came back in WCW, and he had say what you want about how terrible of the product was when Hogan came into WCW, but it still leads to some of the most cartoony, corny, campy segments and moments of all time. all the Dungeon of Doom stuff. Hogan getting lost or something like that. Say, what the hell? What the heck? There's no Hulkamaniacs here. Oh my god. Like, it was just so lame. It was so bad it was good. That and and when RoboCop came to save Sting from the cage. It was terrible in WCW. I'm sure watching it at the time, but looking back on it, I'm glad it happened because A, eventually things got better, and B, it is so unintentionally funny to just watch all that classic WCW stuff. The Giant getting knocked off of the roof in the monster truck match, like none of it makes sense. The Zodiac being weird. Oh my god, there's just so many moments. They're just great. Them shaving Hulk Hogan's mustache off. Hogan becoming the part of the dark side for a little while. And just wearing black clothes before he ever, turned heel in the nWo. Great stuff, man. Great stuff. Boy, I don't even... And then, yeah, obviously he came back in 2002, and Voodoo Child was also a really awesome song they had in WCW, and it was awesome WWE let him keep it for a little bit. And obviously he got his win against Triple H at Backlash. 2002 was the last time he was world champion. And then I think he came back and he did the Mr. America stuff, and that was, once again, it's just stupid. But it was funny, it was entertaining. So it was cool that Hogan could kind of make fun of himself in that regard. And then obviously I think it was like payment issues is why that fell through, and it sucked because we never got Mr. America and in any of the WWE games, because he was supposed to be in Here Comes the Pain, I think, as a variation. And I think they were gonna have regular Hulk Hogan, 80s Hulk Hogan, and then that Mr. America gimmick. And Here Comes the Pain, they all got taken out. And then eventually in SmackDown vs. Raw 2006, that's when we got, the three Hogans. We got the 80s Hogan, we got the, modern day Hulk Hogan, and then of course we eventually got the, the nWo Hollywood Hulk Hogan. And it's weird because you would think that they would have just been easier if they just had those as like alternate costumes for them. Because I don't think the movesets were all really too different. But that said, I mean, they kind of did the same thing with, Dude Love like next year. I think SmackDown vs. Raw 2007. Someone's gonna correct me in the comments, but I think that might be. It's the only one that comes to mind in which the four faces of Foley are actually in one game, and that might be the case in one of the newest games or something like that. And we've gotten pretty close, but I'm pretty sure SmackDown vs. Raw 2007 is the only game to have Cactus Jack, Dude Love, Mankind, and Mick Foley. But like I said, I used to think that Mr. Sacco only showed up in the Aki series, and then, I got embarrassed and reminded right away when I uploaded that video that, Mr. Sacco came back in like the SmackDown vs. Raw games and stuff. So I'm probably going to be looking pretty goofy on that one. But I am curious, make me look goofy. I want to know what other games have all four characters in it. And I think his last match in the WWE, his last rivalry, well, actually before that, he had a great feud with Shawn Michaels. It was almost so bad it was good kind of thing. But another great feud was Shawn Michaels and Hulk Hogan, and it seemed like it was mostly just Shawn kind of doing the feud himself, and they had the obviously that famous Larry King segment of like Shawn dressed as Hulk Hogan and acting all old and his back getting out and giving out and stuff like that. I think they even actually made an action figure of that, it's just awesome. And then Shawn being irritated that Hogan was being kind of Hogan and not wanting to put Shawn over in a rematch, so Shawn was overselling the entire time. And it's just kind of, once again, one of the greatest, so bad it's good matches I've ever seen in my life. And then his last feud was with Randy Orton, and I think it was in a lot of ways used to kind of just promote Hogan's No Best, is what people often say, and that's that was his reality TV show for a brief while of him and his family, and I think it was supposed to be kind of like a take on the Ozzy Osbourne and his reality show family and stuff like that, and how they were all crazy. And we got another victory there, and eventually there was like an episode where I think it was like Orton knows best or something stupid like that. So it's definitely like into a promotion there, and I think it was just there to kind of promote, Hulk show and stuff like that. But that said, I think the disappointing part of that rivalry is Randy Orton really should have gone over, as the Legend Killer, could have gotten that. I think that's kind of like the end of the Legend Killer gimmick too, because he lost, and that kind of seemingly faded into the background a little bit as they kind of changed his character. And I think Orton really could have used that victory at the time. And then eventually, Hogan would go on to TNA with Bischoff. A lot of people say, that ruined TNA, and that if Hogan never came in, TNA would be a much bigger deal today. And somebody even said it would be like in the spot that AEW would be in now. I don't agree with that. I think unless if they were able to really capture people's imaginations with another, like top tier feud, kind of like, Samoa Joe and Kurt Angle, I don't think that TNA, it's still around obviously today, but I still think it would be kind of in a similar kind of relevance. But that's just my opinion, I don't think it was so bad with, the Hogan rivalry and stuff like that it drew people away. But once again, that's just me. I could be wrong on that aspect, but I think just already at that point, I think TNA had already kind of gotten the reputation of being like a WWE light kind of project or product. And I think he tried to return to the WWE in like 2008 or something like that, and Hulk Hogan, he failed the physical tests and stuff like that, so I don't know who he was going to feud with or anything like that. I remember just hearing it as a rumor. So maybe Hogan was lying himself again or something like that. And maybe, he was just saying, oh, yeah, I would have went over there and I would have put, John Cena over, and that would have legitimized, John Cena in the eyes of the fans, and people wouldn't boo him anymore or anything like that. But oh no, we got Macho Man Randy Savage. He's seeing us talking to Elizabeth backstage. And it looks like he's going to do what he usually does. He's going to do nothing about it. And then obviously, I think his TNA run was kind of the last big thing Hogan ever really did, and in wrestling, really, that was actually a big deal and stuff like that. Obviously, there was a time he went, I think it was WrestleMania 30, in which he was with Austin and Rock, and he said he was in I think the Silver Dome or something like that, but it was the Superdome, or it was vice versa or something like that, because he was thinking of Andre the Giant. It was funny because you could just see his face when he realized he made the mistake and had to correct it. And of course, there's always the great promo with Vince. Let me just repeat this one more time, just so you understand. If you actually think that I was the right gay guy at the right place at the right time, classic, folks. All right, we hit him with the outsider's edge, but I want to take him. Oh, god damn it! Tried to do the outsider's edge again, but I do want to make him tap. All right, now he just has to stay down. God damn it! I hate that. I hate how he because I thought that like moves like that were supposed to be reserved for only finishers if you had like a finisher in your reversed. But maybe it's something in Revenge that I'm just not aware of. I I don't reverse very often, but I think we finally got him down here, folks. He's going to tap. Yeah, that's what I thought. That doesn't work for me, brother. But like I said, I forget if I mentioned it in this video yet or something like that. But one of the funniest, like I said, I don't mind jokes in the comments if you want to share. But like one of the funniest things I seen was because I seen that Hogan had passed on like the James Romero or I can't remember how you pronounce his last name, but it's the guy who does the WSI shoot interviews, and he's also the co-host with Stevie Richards and Dutch Mantel on their shows. Great podcast, by the way. I highly recommend them. But I learned it from him, and then in the comments of that video, somebody said Hogan's not gonna get buried because he never put anybody over it. I don't know, like stupid stuff like that, it's appreciated and stuff, but and another one said that somebody said that, he wasn't gonna put death over because that doesn't work for him, brother, and stuff like that. Just stupid, goofy stuff like that is stuff that I don't mind seeing. But yeah, I don't know. You're crazy if you think that Hulk Hogan wasn't one of the biggest stars in wrestling, and at the very least, can't appreciate what he has done for this business and all the sacrifices he's made and stuff like that. If you want to call him out for the bad stuff, hey, I agree with you, man. I mean, Sting got screwed over 100%. I mean, it's kind of his fault when you really think about it. I mean, come on, guys. I mean, did you see Sting at Starrcade 1997? I mean, he didn't even have a fucking tan, dude. How could he go over Hulk Hogan when he didn't have a fucking tan? It's just basic. It's wrestling 101, okay, guys? If you don't understand that, then I guess you're just some sort of glue eater or something like that. Some window-licking, glue-eating something, folks. I don't even know. I can't even finish my insult. Alright, let's get back in the ring before we get counted out, though. We want to win this one fair and square. Then, of course, there's also, the issues with a lot of people, Jake the Snake. They say that, he got cheered by when he was feuding with Hogan, and that's why his push ended as a potential main event run with Hogan. This could be it. Oh, wow. But yeah, I mean, like I mentioned earlier, I mean, Hogan definitely had periods where he was stale, but the peaks, I think, in my opinion, outweigh the negatives as far as like his popularity, waning later on. But I definitely have to, my thought process on it is if you get booed and you're a face, I think the WWE tries, and they tried, and I think for a lot of people, they have convinced a lot of people that just a reaction in and of itself is good. If you're supposed to be the biggest, babyface and the star of the promotion, if you're getting booed, I'm sorry, you're just not. It's not necessarily always your fault. I think we have seen that in a lot of ways. But at the end of the day, you're not really the biggest face. I'm sorry, So that's how I feel with John Cena and with Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns, when he turned heel, it was the complete opposite. They made the complete right decision with that. Let him show his actual personality. I mean, he really showed, hey, this is why people pushed him, in the company. He's the star. He was a big mega star. He had main event style matches, and of course he also just had more natural charisma and mic ability than anybody once he was actually able to say what he wanted to say on the mic. But that said, folks, first off, I want you to share your favorite Hulk Hogan memory, favorite Hulk Hogan match, even just if you're a fan of like all the memes or weird lies about surrounding Hulk Hogan, share your favorite one of those. But that said, I mean, just keep it classy, Like I said, I mean, you're not doing the world a favor or anybody a favor by just bad-mouthing someone that recently passed or anything like that. But thanks for watching, and remember to have a nice day.